Hi everyone, and welcome to a new video series that I'll be starting called Notion and Friends. In this series, I'll be inviting different guest speakers to come on and talk about the different ways that they use Notion in their lives, be it in their workplace, in their personal lives, or however else they use Notion. So I'm super excited to explore a lot of different Notion use cases. And today I'm going to be joined by an amazing friend and also incredibly talented person, Sonali Khetia. She is a product manager and UX analyst, and we'll dive more into what she'll be covering in Notion in just a second. But first, we're going to start with exploring some of the recent Notion updates that have come out that you might not have heard of. So first and foremost, we have AI meeting notes. For anyone who hasn't explored this feature yet in Notion, please do. It's a feature that allows you to capture and summarize conversations you have through different meeting platforms, and it condenses all that information in an easy to read manner within Notion itself. I've personally used it for several of my meetings, and I find that it's incredibly concise. It captures all the essential details in incredible detail, and it's just a great way to avoid myself having to write out notes manually. So AI meeting notes is definitely an exciting feature that you should check out. Next, we have AI Home. If you navigate to your Home tab in Notion, you'll see that there's a completely revamped AI Home, and it allows you to do a couple of different things, mainly explore your different Notion pages, but also the key feature it involves is letting you ask Notion AI a question, similar to how you would ask ChatGPT or whatever AI platform that you use. You can also ask Notion AI any question regarding your own Notion pages, your own Notion documents. So definitely check it out and see how that works for you. And last but not least, we have being able to chat directly with AI models within Notion. So you don't have to just chat with Notion AI, you can chat with ChatGPT and a variety of other Notion chat agents right within your AI Home tab. So it's a way of having to avoid using different applications when you can do it all within Notion. Hopefully you get time to explore all those super exciting features. But to get back into what we're doing today, let me invite our guest speaker, Sonali, to briefly introduce herself.
Hi, Elsa. Thank you for having me on Notion and Friends. I'm a big fan of Notion, so this is like a fun way to spread the love and get more people addicted. So, a little bit about me for those watching. I'm a core product manager in tech, and I've been doing this for 4.5 years. So, there are different types of PMs in techs, but what core product managers do is they focus on user experience and building out the core features of a software. So, I work closely with designers, researchers, and customer facing teams, and we use Agile methodology to manage the product development process.
Amazing. So, Sonali, I'm super excited to hear what we will be covering with you in Notion today. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, so today I'd like to show you guys how I would use Notion and how I'd modify a template in Notion to create like an agile project management board. If I found myself working for a startup and I'm building the product process from scratch. So I think that there are many tools out there that are really specialized for ticket management in tech, in tech companies. But what I really like about Notion is that its free plan is more accessible for smaller teams. It's also a very flexible tool, so you can have all your project documents and your tickets in one place instead of having separate, Google Docs and like a ticket management system and kind of figuring out how to make all of these things work together.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to dive into that. So let's hop right in and yeah, let's see what you teach us about Notion today.
Okay, so this is the Agile Project Management template that you see before you. I have modified it a little bit, and there are three sections. There's the project section where you can have an overview of your project and you can click into any project to get more details. Then there's the sprint section, and I'll get to what sprints are in a second, but you can see what is in each sprint and what are the tasks and what is the timeline. And then there's the task section. This is where most of the work happens, and this is where you would see all the tasks that your team has. by project, what's not been assigned to anyone. So there are a lot of different views available and different ways that you can kind of organize the work that is going on. So the goal of this template is to be able to visualize where you are in the project, who's doing what, and when, and what's the progress, and providing them with more details on it, or changing the status or assigning priorities so that you can kind of know what you need to do next. But before I dive into that, let's familiarize ourselves with a few terminologies in agile methodology. So the first one is like, just what is agile? What do we do when we say agile project management? So in a very simple way, agile is a way of building products or leading projects where you don't know all the requirements up front, like requirements are always being added or changed, but you still want to start working on your product with what you know, and you will add more features iteratively. And this process involves giving a very simple version of the product first, that we call the MVP, and then
Mm-hmm.
over time, with more and more work, you make it a more elaborate version of the project. It involves things like sprints, tasks, projects, and it has certain specific meetings and rituals that a product manager and the product team would do to kind of maintain the process. So, let me tell you a little bit about that. So, one of the main rituals of Agile is the Agile sprint. So, the Agile sprint is basically a time block. So, it's a period of time, and you keep having one sprint and then the next and the next. So usually this time period is 2 weeks, and during this time period, when you start, you have certain tasks that you have already decided that you're going to do, that are that are priority. And then during this 2 week period, you cannot add anything else to the project, or to the you can't give more work to the engineers. They will just work on those tasks, and only maybe urgent bug requests can be added in the middle of sprints. And yeah, so this helps the engineers to focus. So a sprint is basically a time period during which the tasks which will be done are already fixed.
Okay, and
Then
a
we have
quick
some,
question.
yeah.
For these sprints and the other things that you're going to mention, is it the PM who normally organizes this whole system?
Yes, so it's usually the PM who prioritizes what tasks should be going into the sprint. At the beginning of each sprint, they allocate work to each member of the team, and then the team members do the work. And then at the end of the sprint, you kind of review what was done and what's pending, and you might move certain pending tasks to the next sprint, and you might add some new tasks or requirements which came in to the new sprint. So that's a big role of the product manager.
Okay, cool.
So then you have stand up meetings. So these are like very short daily meetings where each team member will present what they're working on, what did they do yesterday, what they're doing today, and if they are blocked anywhere. And usually, when you do stand up meetings, you have your, like you, when you're discussing the work, you want something in front of you, like a list of tickets that a certain person is supposed to do, and they give updates on those tasks. So that's what one of the ways that we will use this board. And then another very important component is the backlog. So the backlog is basically a list of tasks that is not in the sprint yet, but you need to prioritize it. So you need to decide if it's going to go in the next sprint. And how you prioritize it generally is that first you add the details, then you try to figure out, how important is this? Can it be done? How long would it take to do it? So those are the kind of things that product managers do. But in this template, you will be able to have your backlog all in one place, and you'll be able to kind of add more details to it. And then I'll show you how at the beginning of each sprint, you will prioritize the backlog and add tickets from the backlog into the next sprint. So yeah, I think we are all done with the glossary. Now I would like to show you guys how I would find this template on Notion and add it, and then I would show you how I would make slight edits to the template so that we have this kind of view. And then in the end, I will show you how I would actually use the template to do these tasks that I just mentioned, like how I would do my sprints, how I would do stand up meetings, and how I would manage the product backlog using this template. Okay, so let's dive
Amazing.
in.
I'm
Okay.
excited. And just side note as well, Sonali's going to be showing us how to get templates, but you can get templates for literally anything in Notion. So you'll see once she opens up the Notion template library how many different kinds of templates you can explore. You don't have to build things from scratch if you're new. Start with a template and go from there.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of cool stuff. You can find your templates on the sidebar. You just have to scroll down and look for this. And once you've clicked on templates, a page like this should open up. There are a lot of unique and interesting templates over here. So, for the one that I'm using right now, you would go to the search bar and type Agile Project Management and then select the first one. Uh, Okay, so this is not the one. Yeah. So this happens sometimes, but I'm gonna tell you how to find the right one. Okay. Okay. So the right one has this shoe icon, okay, and these sticky notes. So yeah, you should look for this one. And then because I've added it before, it's saying add again, but you would basically click this button and the template would be added to your workspace. So it would be added on the left to your list of documents. Um, but if you have a lot of documents, then you might go to more and scroll down to the bottom, and you would find it at the very bottom. As you can see, I have many of these. So we're going to jump into it. So okay. So when you first download the template, this is what it's going to look like, and you will be seeing everything at once. But I don't like this because I feel like this is too much information, and at any given time, I only want one piece of information. So either I want to know about the sprints, or I want to know about the projects or the tasks. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a very helpful thing in Notion called toggle list. So we're going to create a toggle list. What this does is it basically hides stuff. So I'm going to call the first one projects. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and I'm going to drop it in here. And now I can just hide it, right? That's super cool. So next I'm going to say sprints. Okay, again, this, okay, say sprints. And then I will open it. There's nothing in the list right now. Again, go here, click here, and drag and drop and close it. And lastly, okay, wait. Oh, I think that one was the tasks. Okay, and lastly, the sprint. And then again, open, drag, drop, close. Okay, so now everything is clean and nice and simple. And I usually like to arrange it in this manner because there's a certain hierarchy to it. Like the projects are the higher level component that you would be doing over maybe more than a month. Then you have sprints that you'd be doing over 2 week periods. And then you have tasks which usually have like due dates. They might take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, or even some tasks would, extend beyond one sprint. Okay, so now let's go to projects. So in the projects section, you'll see that there are already some projects in the template. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on one and we're going to explore it. So basically, what this whole section is a database. Notion has a concept of databases, and a database is simply a table, very simply a table. If you go to the all section, you will actually see that this is just a table at the end of the day. But there are different ways of viewing the data in the table. So, this is one of the ways of viewing the data, which is the board view. So when you click into it, now what we're seeing is a page. And this page is about the project. And each line over here is a row in that page. So So we have some rows like status, who are the people working on the project, the completion, which is determined by the tasks and how many of the tasks are done, dates of the projects, and the tasks in the project, right? So, and then if you scroll down, you'll see that every project should have some description and every project should have some tasks. So initially, if I wanted to start writing a new project, I would, let's say, for example, this is about um, integrating payments for mobile money. Okay. So let's say this is a new project I want to do. I'll click into it and now I can add all the details, right? So I'm going to start with the status. Right now it's in backlog. I will add the people. Then the completion will remain empty until you start doing some tasks. I might have some dates in mind for it. So I might say this is supposed to happen in July. So for dates, one important thing is that if you want there to be a start and end date, you should toggle the end date button, right? And then then over here, ideally, you should add a description that explains what needs to be done, what are the requirements of the project, and puts it in simple language. And then ideally, there should be tasks. Sometimes we as product managers add tasks, and these are usually bug or ad hoc requests that we have, like can you find out what this what's happening over here, or what is this issue that's reported by customer service. But a lot of times engineers add tasks to their own projects based on how they expect the work to be broken down, so then you would just be reviewing it.
Okay.
So yeah,
And
this is an example.
the way the project is set up, I'm assuming is also a template because when you open a new project, you already had all those details filled in, like about the
Yes.
project, etc. Okay.
Yes. So it's set up as a table, and the table provides you with the template. If you want to add any more rows or any more information, like, so it has certain, these are the properties. The properties are basically what we are seeing as columns, right? So you can show or hide properties. Like if I want to see tasks of the project, I can show it or I can hide it. And then also I can add a new property. Let's say um, the property is the design file, okay? Design file. If I want to add a link over here, so if I want every project to have a design file attached to it, I would do this. And then I would say, okay, so whenever somebody is filling in the project template, they would always have to, like, they would always see this option of adding a design file. So it kind of reminds them that this is a necessary step. So you can customize the template yourself. Right. So let's move on. So after projects, and I'll come back to this, but after projects, we'll talk about sprints. So sprints are basically your time blocks, right? And I don't like the timeline view so much for sprints. I like the table view. So I'm just going to drag it and here. So this is a table view for sprints. And what information you can basically find here is that what are your sprints. This is just like the sprints are numbered according to, like, from the time when you started doing the work, whether this is the current sprint or not, based on the today's date. So right now it might be sprint 3 if the dates were like the current dates, and then the tasks in the sprint. So first thing we're going to do here to kind of create like a blank slate is we're going to add dates. Okay. So today is 1st of July, Sunday, and I want my sprint to be a 2 week long sprint. So I'm going to say from 1st to 15th is the sprint number 1. Okay, and then for sprint number 2, and I like to overlap the first day of the sprint with the last day of the next sprint. So sprint number 2 will start from 15th to 29th. Okay, again, the end date has to be toggled, otherwise it doesn't work. And then the last one will be from 29th, okay, from 29th to 13th. Okay, so now these are all 2 week periods, and the last date is supposed to overlap. Sorry. Give me a moment. Yes, now it's done. Yeah,
I
so the last
noticed
date is overlap.
for that first sprint, there was that checkbox that automatically appeared
Yeah,
once you set the
because
date.
yeah, this is like a simple rule based thing in the template. So when the dates change, the is current sprint will also change, and this helps with some of the filtering, as I will show you later. So you always want to know what is the current sprint, so that if I want to see what are we doing this week or these 2 weeks, I can easily filter the tasks, right? Okay, so let's go further. So these are the sprints, right? You can now, let's say we're going into the next sprint. I would add a sprint, so I would say sprint 4, and then I would add the dates to it, and it's really not that, yeah. But basically it's ideally you should at least plan, like put in like 10 rows here, just to start yourself out, so that you don't have to keep adding new rows, right? And then I would start adding tasks here, and I would add the tasks that maybe are incomplete, but we're not going to use this section to do it. I'll show you how we'll do it a little bit later. So, tasks. Okay, let's talk about tasks. This is where you'll be doing most of your work with your team, also on your own, because most of the work is broken down into individual tasks. So, in the tasks table, right, let me first also show you like all tasks, okay, how the table looks like if you look at all the tasks together. This is basically a table, and each task is named, like it has some sort of instructions, right? What is the task about? It has a status, it is assigned to somebody, it might have a due date, and a task should always have a sprint assigned to it, unless there is, like, you don't plan on doing it right now. So if it doesn't have a sprint assigned, then this task is known as part of the backlog, right? And then it may or may not have a project. So if it doesn't have a project, then I typically like to either put it as a bug or ad hoc, right? So what we can do here very quickly is, let's say if this is a bug or ad hoc task, it doesn't have, like, invite team members, it doesn't have a project, I can quickly, so I don't see, these are the 4 projects we have, I don't see anything called ad hoc, so I can say ad hoc, and it says no results, new ad hoc in projects, so I can add ad hoc as a project right from here, and now this becomes the first task in the ad hoc project. Okay, so then we have these views. Okay, so the first view under tasks is by project. So over here, you will see the tasks under each project. I don't find this view to be super helpful, but it's helpful when you are planning a project. So when I've added a project in the first section and then I want to add new tasks to it, I can easily do it here. This is where I would do it ideally. Um, so yeah, this is where that would happen. Then the this sprint section, this is basically a board which shows the, it's called a Kanban board, right? So you can see the state, the, like, what status each task is in, and it's also divided by the person who it's assigned to. So this is the view that I would ideally use during daily stand-ups, and I'll show you how a little bit later. So then we have the backlog. The backlog section has all the sprints and the tasks in the sprints, and it also has the backlog. So basically, this is what I would use for when I want to say, okay, what do I add to the next sprint, new tasks that I want to take from the backlog and add to the sprint. So I would go here and I would maybe look at what is the highest priority. But in order to do that, one important thing that I would do is to each task, I would want to know what the priority is, right? So this would help me to add a property. Okay. So it's saying new property on tasks. I would add the priority property. It's already being suggested. So if I select it, it's asking me if I want to say high, medium, low, if I want to say P0, P1, P2. I usually like this P0, P1, P2. So that's what I'm going to add. And I'm also going to shrink the columns a little bit so that it's easier to view. And then I'm going to add one more property here. Mm, wait. No, I don't want to add new task.
I think if you scroll to the right, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. And then I also want to add estimates. So, what estimates does is it helps you to figure out how long a certain task is going to take. And then in a certain week, you don't want to assign too many large tasks to one person. So, either a person would have like maybe one or two small tasks and one large task, or they would have a number of small tasks, or they would have like maybe two large tasks. But how we say small and large, usually the engineers, they tell you that I think this will take 2 days or 3 days, and we assign points to it. So I like to use points. And what it does is if I click on estimates, then I can select how many points based on how many days it's going to take. And if something is small and it's only going to take like half a day, then I can even make make a new one just by typing it in,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So yeah, that's estimates, and then there's priorities. Usually, not everything is high priority, and as a product manager, it's your role to sit down and say what is high priority, what is important but not urgent, and what is like maybe this is good to do, like good to have, but based on like the amount of work we have, we can't do it right now. Okay. And then mine, these would be tasks assigned to you. This might be something like write a product requirement document or add more details to another task. So that would be your tasks. You can use this section to kind of visualize what you need to do for that week. And then people, again, the people section, again, it shows you the tasks based on people. I don't use this so much. And then there's the all tasks where it's like a master list. Okay. So now that I've introduced all these sections,
And just to
uh,
highlight as well, because this is a template, you have all these different views that have been set up. So, view by groups, filters. So, I think also as a new person using Notion, trying to do this on your own might be a bit challenging. But if you're using a template and that's already set up, you don't even really have to think about it. Like, it's already provided to you, and you can just explore the different views and how they work. So, I think I really like this template for that reason.
yeah, exactly. That's why I myself, I don't have the time or the patience to set this
Yeah.
up myself. So I would just use it. So let's try to add a new task over here, right? As an example. So here I might say that, okay, I'm going to do a API integration for Google sign in, okay? And this task might be part of a project. Maybe this is assigned to someone. Right now I don't have anybody on my Notion because I don't use it for this purpose, but you can actually invite people to your Notion so that all of you can see and share the same board. So let me show you guys how to do it right now. Okay, so if I want to add more people, I would go here and I would click share, and then it says email or group separated by. So over here I would just add the email of the person I want to invite, and I would go and click invite, and they would be able to access the page, and they would be able to make changes and everything. So ideally, if it's something that you don't want everyone to see, you're not going to select everyone on the web. So you only invite people. But yeah, Notion gives you a lot of flexibility. and you can invite many people um, to your project, compared to most of the other ticket management systems where it doesn't there are restrictions and then you have to pay for the plan and upgrade. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, so we were adding a task, right? So now maybe it has a due date. Tasks usually only have a due date when they are very urgent or something needs to be done so that something else has to be started by a certain date.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this is a priority one, and then let's say I'm adding it to so I wouldn't ideally add it to the current sprint, but let's say I don't know when I'll have time to do this, so I just leave it. I don't add it to any sprint, and I will add it to the project which says redesign the onboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now that I've shown you guys like the basic structure of this, I would like to cover like how do we use this template to do our rituals, right? So as we said, our rituals are things like backlog grooming. Okay. So backlog grooming is basically you find your tickets. Okay, you have tickets in the backlog that have not been. Your goal is to add as much details to it and then figure out what is the priority. Okay, so the figuring out what is the priority, that is one of the main things that the product
Mm-hmm.
manager does. And you do it by figuring out, okay, if I do this, what will be the benefit to the company, what will be the benefit to the users, how many users will benefit. So if there's a bug but it's only being faced by, let's say, uh, one user, right? Then you will not prioritize it because there's always other work where something is a problem for a large number of users. So that's how it usually works when you're trying to prioritize stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is called backlog grooming. It basically means prioritizing things in the backlog. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that's one thing. The other thing is your sprint planning. So sprint planning is adding sprint based on engineer engineer bandwidth, okay, and also priority. So what you'll do is you'll try to see how much space does this engineer have in the next 2 weeks. Like, are do they already have a lot of tasks, or is there some room for me to add more tasks to it? And then you plan the sprint for them by adding tasks from the backlog to the current sprint, and then saying that, okay, these are your existing tasks which you have not finished maybe, and then these are your new tasks. So that's what sprint planning is, and you do this for every person who is on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is doing daily. So this is like when each member will give updates and um, share. So during daily stand-ups, you might update the status of a ticket, or you
Mm-hmm.
might say that, okay, a certain ticket has been blocked, so you might move it to the blocked section, or you might add more details to the tickets because maybe the engineer found out some new information. So most of this stuff, and then there's also like project planning. Project planning is something that you usually do it with team lead. So project planning is basically you add all the details about the requirements to the project,
Mm-hmm.
and you work with the engineering team lead to explain to them what the document means and how it's supposed to be, and they might give you input on the feasibility of it and the timelines that will be needed. So that's what you usually do.
Mhm.
So let's start with backlog grooming. Okay, so how would you use this template to do backlog grooming? So when
And
do you do backlog grooming?
just
Yeah.
a quick recap before you continue as well, because we have learned a lot today. I mean, I'm not a PM, but I feel
Yeah.
like I could be a PM now. But Shonali has shown us how to add templates through the template library, how to customize your Notion page and organize it using toggle lists, which is super helpful, how to customize different views within your Notion boards. You know, she's explained we have tables, we have boards, we have cards. So anything can be customized to your preference, how to add new projects or new tasks depending on your databases. And yeah, now you're going to explain how to do these different functions within this Notion template as well. So that's exciting. We have 10 more minutes left in our session, but
Awesome.
I'm sure that we can still learn how to do a couple of these key functions as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this should take just 5 minutes, and then maybe Elsa, if you have any questions. So, backlog grooming is something you might do during the week when you say that, hey, I want to know what we are doing next week. So, it happens before sprint planning. And how I would do backlog grooming is I would go into each task that I have, and I would read what I've written and what details are missing, maybe. And if it doesn't have a priority, I would assign a priority to it. And then at the end of, so for example, this task doesn't have any details, so I would write a very detailed document. I would help the engineer find all the information they need on what needs to be done. At the end of it, I would look at it and I would say, hey, I have all these tasks, let's sort them by the priority. So I would say sort ascending. So the things with the highest priority go first, and then those highest priority tasks would be what I add to the next sprint. So then let's say we are in sprint one, we're going to be in sprint two next week. So I would say, okay, put this in sprint two. So you see this little checkbox on the side. Now this is in sprint two. Why is it not showing up? I'm not sure.
Oh, it's being shifted to the bottom, to the sprint to row.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So now it's in sprint two. Haha. Okay. So then I would also, yeah. So now we have just added the first two tasks to sprint two. And voila. Now you know what's happening next week. So you already have some sort of a plan. Okay, so that's like backlog grooming, but also it goes along with sprint planning. So in sprint planning, what you do is like this sprint planning is usually on either the last day of the current sprint. So what I would do is I would say that okay, this sprint one is the current sprint, sprint two is the next sprint. So I would first identify which sprint we are in and which is the next sprint, right? And then in the current sprint, I would go in and I would just filter items which are not done. Okay, because if it's done, then it's not a problem anymore. But if it's like not started or in progress, then I want to look at them. So now I'm looking at items which are in sprint one and that are either not started or in progress. And now, because sprint one is getting over, I want to move them to the next sprint. So again, I would go here and I would say, okay, remove it from sprint one, add it to sprint two, and same thing for this, remove it from sprint one, add it to sprint two. Okay, so now all those tasks which were in sprint one have gone to sprint two. And as we can see, sprint one, there is no sprint one, it's empty because it had the tasks which are already done, right? So now you have done the sprint planning. But another component of sprint planning is also moving things from the backlog. So we already did that. And so basically two components. One is whatever is not done or not started, you move it to the next sprint, and whatever extra space you have, like if an engineer doesn't have too many pending tickets, then you add things from the backlog to their sprint. Okay, and so now another view that I would like to show you guys is, yeah, so now we'll talk about the daily stand up, right? So, and we use this sprint for that. So what this meeting is like is that you join the meeting and then you start calling on people. You say, okay, sure up, what are you working on? And then they would tell you, okay, something is in progress, something is done, or they might see that a ticket is in progress, but they might say, oh, well, this is now done. So you might say, okay, let's move it. Or if something is done, then you might say, okay, Sonali, you need to test it. So yeah, that's a kind, then you go to the next person and the next person and so on.
Mhm.
So that's what this sprint is what I would use for my daily stand-ups. Backlog is what I would use for backlog grooming and
Mhm.
sprint planning. And then for project planning, I would use this section where I would be able to add new projects or add more details to any existing projects. And then I would say, hey, I would go to the engineering manager and I would talk him through the whole project. And then he might suggest some timelines to it. And he
Mhm.
might suggest adding certain and that will help us to visualize what's in the project and what needs to be done. So yeah, I think I've covered all the basics, and then there's a lot more when it comes to agile product management. But I think this is what, like, absolutely everything you need to get started with Notion for your agile product management practices. And I hope that you guys found this video to be useful, and I hope it gets you started. Like if you're a startup, if you're like a founder, or if you're an engineering manager, or like me, if you're a product manager, this would be really helpful for you, I'm guessing. So yeah.
I mean, thank you so much, Sonali. I think this was super helpful. Anyone who isn't using Notion right now is probably thinking to themselves, maybe I should explore this as a tool. I have a few questions. I guess my first is, before you started using Notion for this process, how many different tools did you have to use to manage, sprints and all that?
I don't think that's the problem actually. So the
Mm-hmm.
problem is that you have tools for doing agile product management, but they're usually paid, and there's a limit to how many team members you can add to a certain project. So that's where the challenges would come, that maybe our team is growing and we want to add more people, but we can't because now it becomes a expensive paid plan. But with Notion, it's like, it gives you more flexibility because you can add people and it doesn't have a cost for that specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then the other product is that we currently use two different products. One product is for where we write our PRDs or product requirement documents. That's similar to the projects that I showed you. And then we have another product that we use right now where we maintain our tickets. So those two products like don't talk to each other as much. So over here, you can actually have the product requirement documents and you can have your tickets all in one place. And that's the second thing I like about it. But also, what I like is that you know how much filtering is available. You can really customize the whole page the way you want it. Like there's no you're not constrained. Like the UI can be the way you like it. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That's a really good point, and I'm sure anyone who's watching would be excited to try out that template and see how they can use it for their own PM responsibilities. So to just recap what Sonali has shared with us today, she shared how to find this agile. What was it called again? The name Agile methodology template.
It's called the Agile Project Management Template. It has a little shoe. That's how we remember it. And yeah, fun fact, you can change this to anything you want. So if you want it to be like a laptop, you can make it a laptop. You can change this part and make it as visually appealing. You can put your company's brand here. So yeah, you can customize it.
You can make it as personal or as specific as you want, which is amazing. So thank you again for showing us that, and I think that's super informative. So Sonali, thank you for being a guest on our first episode of Notion and Friends. Before we close things off, just tell the audience how they can reach out to you if they have questions or inquiries and
Sure.
wanted to discuss more.
Okay, I'm just going to write down my email over here.
Okay.
So it's Sonali Khetia. My email is Khetia Sonali at gmail.com. And so this is how you would search for me on LinkedIn. And this is my email. If you'd like to email me, you can email me at khetiasonali.com.
Amazing. Yeah, we can see that clearly. Thank you so much, Sonali, and thank you to everyone who has watched this video. Hopefully, you learned about how you can use Notion as a product manager or in whatever responsibilities you have at your workplace. Stay tuned for our next guest who will be sharing a different Notion use case and how they apply Notion in their life and at their work. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Okay, bye, Elsa.
Bye.